Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Barton for the I gotta pull the mic over for the Mortgage Minute. Thanks very much for tuning in and listening. A few things happening. Let's get right to the rates. It's Monday, and we're trying to come up with a new name for the Monday show. How's the Monday Mortgage? How's that? Sounds pretty good. Okay, so rates. Let's just talk about rates just quickly for a second. The 10-year yield, by the way, is at 1.494. That's what the bonds are paying. The 30-year fixed rate is 3.05, 2.44 for the 15, 2.63 for FHA, 3.12 for the jumbo loan, and 2.25 for the 5/1 ARM. The forbearances are down again, which is a good thing. Employment and forbearances, there's this imbalance between how many people need a job and how many people companies are looking for to go to work. One is at 9.2, the other is at 8.75. That's how many people are out of work. So this imbalance, does it have to do more with people being afraid of COVID? Does it have to do more with childcare? Or is it simply about money? You can make more money at home than you do going back to work. I think it's a combination of all three. These are the things that need to be solved relatively quickly so that we can get the country back to work. We're looking at the ending of moratorium on foreclosures for rentals at the end of July. And we're looking, obviously, at the end of the year for moratorium to be ending for mortgages. So all of these things are in process to be done. One thing, what we often talk about is the rates, right? Rates rise, rates lower, and why that happens. We usually talk about the 10-year, and the 10-year and why government debt, being what it is bought and sold, and how that 10-year affects rates. Another thing that affects rates is the inflation rate, and what happens to the inflation rate. And explained simply to me today, which by Mathew over at Mortgage News Daily, and he has a great article on it if you want to go there. But what he talks about is how when you do a loan and you're borrowing money and you pay that money back, if we're in a low interest rate, i.e. that you're having to pay a low interest rate, and inflation is also low, that means the money you pay out is worth the same when you finish paying off that loan as it did when you started. If there's inflation, the money that you're paying off at the beginning is worth more than the money you're paying off at the end. Why? Because you can buy less stuff at the end than you could at the beginning of the loan. Therefore, the inflation is causing the money to be worth less. That's why rates go up, because lenders don't want to have owing more money, or when the money's owed to them, making less money on the money at the back end of the deal. So they have to make up that money that they're losing through inflation by raising rates to make sure the margins are the same. That's why inflation is a bad thing. And overall, macroly, in terms of the economy, what we would see by long-term debt, the United States pays off an ungodly amount of interest on the money they owe. Now, currently, because we're in a low interest environment, that money that they're paying off isn't as great as it will be when we're over 3% inflation, which is where we are now. We were historically below 2% for at least almost 10 years. So the government debt and the amount of money that we paid to pay off the government debt, i.e. they had to sell bonds, so now we have to sell bonds at an even greater number in order to get the same purchasing power, or the money to pay the debts of the United States, than we could. So that's why rates will rise. That's why the money is worth less, and that's why when the government talks about selling more debt and they have to raise the price to the debt and nobody's buying it, that means they have to lower the price and up the yield, which in turn gives us more inflation, which in turn causes more debt. All of these things are not good. So when they talk about inflation and the Fed's job to keep inflation under control, I think it's the most important job out there. Not necessarily less than stimulus, but this stimulus has been going on since 2008. And we've had a couple of years off where we had no quantitative easing, or that's why you hear all this taper talk right now, because hawks, especially inflation hawks, are extremely worried about how the national debt is going to be paid down. And really, how does it affect you as the borrower? It's going to cost you more money to get a loan. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that cools off the housing market. Maybe that drives prices down. It's a real shell game right now, and we're not quite sure where it's going to feather out. Anyway, I'm Jeff Barton for the Mortgage Minute here on a Monday for the Mortgage Monday. and we'll see you next time. Thanks.